Olivia Blackwood stared at the rain pattering against the library window, trying to make sense of the words that hung in the air between her and Mrs. Thornfield. The older woman sat primly at her mahogany desk, her silver-streaked hair pulled into a severe bun, not a strand out of place, much like her impeccable logic. "You'll marry Julian Reed next month," Mrs. Thornfield stated, her voice as cool and crisp as autumn air. "The arrangements have already been made." Olivia's fingers clutched the armrests of her chair. "Julian Reed, the groundskeeper's nephew?" "Yes." Mrs. Thornfield placed her fountain pen down with precision. "He needs stability. You need security. A fair exchange, I would say." The grandfather clock in the corner ticked loudly, counting down seconds of Olivia's diminishing freedom. She had lived in Thornfield Manor since she was 8. When her parents' fishing boat had been claimed by Whisper Harbor's treacherous waters, the Thornfields had taken her, and not out of kindness. She'd come to understand, but obligation too. Business partners. "But I don't even know him," Olivia whispered, her voice small against the vastness of the library. Mrs. Thornfield's lips tightened. "Olivia, you are 23, you have no family, no fortune of your own. We've provided you with education, shelter, clothing, everything. It's time you understood your position." Each word landed like a pebble, creating ripples of harsh reality. Olivia had always known she was different from the Thornfields' biological daughter, Penelope, who attended finishing school in Europe. She was the orphan, the charity case, the girl who ate at their table, but never truly belonged. "May I at least meet him before you've seen him in the gardens?" Mrs. Thornfield interrupted. "He's been working here for 3 months." Pictured the tall, quiet man who tended the rose bushes with unexpected gentleness. Dark hair, serious eyes, always with dirt-stained hands and worn clothes. They had never spoken beyond polite nods. The wedding was small and joyless, held in the Thornfields' private chapel. No white gown for Olivia, just a simple blue dress. No celebration, just paperwork. Julian stood beside her in ill-fitting formal clothes, his face unreadable, his eye dew barely audible. That evening, they moved into the gatehouse at the edge of the Thornfield Estada, small cottage with peeling paint and windows that whistled when the sea wind blew. Far enough to be out of sight, close enough to keep working on the grounds. "This is your room," Julian said, showing her a modest bedroom with faded wallpaper. His first complete sentence to her. "I'll take the one across the hall." Relief and disappointment tangled in Olivia's chest. "Thank you." That night, she sat alone by the window, watching moonlight silver the distant waters of Whisper Harbor. The same waters that had made her an orphan now seemed to mock her predicament. Married to a stranger who wouldn't look her in the eye, living in a cottage that wasn't truly hers, still tethered to the Thornfields like a boat that could never quite leave the shore. In the morning, she found a cup of tea on the kitchen table, still warm with honey and lemon, exactly how she liked it, though she couldn't remember telling Julian this. A note beside it read simply, "Gone to work. Back at dusk." Olivia wrapped her fingers around the warm cup and tried not to cry. This was her life now, a manner of convenience with a man whose voice she barely knew, dependent on a family that had never truly wanted her. She sipped the tea and was surprised to find it perfectly brewed. Perhaps this small kindness was something to hold on to in the storm. Part 2. Strangers under one roof 2 weeks into their marriage, Olivia and Julian had developed an awkward rhythm. Julian left before dawn each day, leaving behind a cup of tea and sometimes freshly picked wildflowers in a jam jar. He returned, at dusk, exhausted, speaking only when necessary over their shared meals. Olivia found herself watching him when he wasn't looking. The careful way he cut vegetables for dinner, how he mended broken furniture with skilled hands, the gentle manner he had with the stray cat that visited their back door. Each observation was a small piece of a puzzle she couldn't yet assemble. "You work too hard," she said one evening, as Julian nursed blistered hands. He looked up, startled by the direct address. "It's what I'm used to,"
Olivia
said, reaching for the salve. Hesitantly, he extended his hands. As she worked the ointment into his calloused skin, she noticed tiny scars across his knuckles, old injuries that spoke of years of labor. "Your hands don't seem like a gardener's," she remarked. "They're strong, but different somehow." Julian withdrew them quickly. "I've done many jobs. That night a storm battered the cottage. Unable to sleep, Olivia wandered to the kitchen and found Julian at the table, sketching by lamplight. He covered the paper hastily when she entered. "Sorry," she murmured, turning to leave. "No, wait." His voice stopped her. "Are you comfortable here? With everything?" The unexpected question hung between them. Olivia considered lying but found herself unable to. "Not entirely, but I'm trying." Julian nodded slowly. "As am I." The next day, while hanging laundry, Olivia noticed an elegant black car parked behind the greenhouse. A distinguished man in an expensive suit emerged, speaking intently with Julian. When Julian saw her watching, he quickly steered the visitor away. That evening, Julian brought home fresh fish from the harbor. "I thought we could have something different tonight," he said, almost shyly. As they ate, Olivia gathered her courage. "Who was that man today, by the greenhouse?" "Hush." Julian's fork paused midway to his mouth. "An old acquaintance." He didn't look like someone who normally visits groundskeepers. Something shifted in Julian's eyes, wariness, perhaps regret. "There are parts of my life I don't discuss. We're married," Olivia said quietly, "yet we're strangers." Julian set down his fork. "Some strangers are safer that way." That night, Olivia found a book on her pillow, a volume of poetry she had once mentioned liking. Inside the cover was a pressed forget-me-not flower. No note, no explanation. Just this small, wordless gift that made her wonder what kind of man her husband truly was. When Mrs. Thornfield summoned Olivia to the main house the following week, her scrutiny was cold and invasive. "Is the marriage satisfactory?" she asked, her meaning clear. "Julian is kind," Olivia answered carefully. Mrs. Thornfield's lips thinned. "Kindness wasn't the arrangement, my dear. The Reed family has obligations to fulfill, as do you." 8. Walking back to the cottage, Olivia realized with startling clarity that she had begun to think of it as home, not because of the place itself, but because it was where Julian was. The thought terrified her. How could she be developing feelings for someone she hardly knew? Someone who clearly had secrets? That evening, finding Julian in the garden, Olivia asked the question that had been building inside her. "Why did you agree to this marriage?" Julian looked at her, really looked at her for perhaps the first time, "'Cause I thought you might be someone who could see beyond appearances." Then he turned away, leaving Olivia to wonder which appearances he meant. Spring arrived at Whisper Harbor, bringing with it longer days and new growth in the garden Julian tended. Olivia had taken a position teaching literature at the village school, grateful for the independence it provided and the respite from Mrs. Lee Thornfield's scrutiny. The distance between Olivia and Julian had begun to soften at the edges. They still didn't speak much, but their silences had transformed from awkward to companionable. She noticed how he'd started leaving books he thought she might enjoy on the kitchen table. She'd begun preparing his favorite meals when she knew he'd worked especially long days, one rainy afternoon. Returning from the school, Olivia took a shortcut through the woods. The path was muddy, visibility poor. She didn't notice the man following her until his footsteps grew too close to ignore. Heart racing, she quickened her pace, then veered off the path, hoping to lose him. "Mrs. Reed," a gravelly voice called, using her married name with a mocking tone. "No need to run. I just want a word about your husband's business." Olivia froze. The stranger emerged from the mist, his expensive coat at odds with his threatening demeanor. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, backing away. The man advanced. "Come now. You both know Reed isn't just a gardener. Tell him Hargrove wants his answer by. Step away from her." Julian's voice cut through the rain like steel. He appeared between trees, his usual calm replaced by cold fury. The man called Hargrove hesitated. "This doesn't concern her, Reed. Everything about." "My wife concerns me," Julian replied, moving to stand between them. "Leave, now." Something in Julian's stanza coiled readiness. An unfamiliar authority made the man retreat with a muttered threat. When they were alone, Julian turned to Olivia, his composure cracking as he checked her for injuries.
Did he
"Hurt you? What did he say? Called you Reed?" Not as a servant, but as if... Olivia searched Julian's face. "Who are you really?" Thunder rumbled overhead. Julian took her hand and led her toward home, sheltering her beneath his coat. "Not here." Not now. That night, after changing into dry clothes, they sat before the fireplace. Julian's hands trembled slightly as he poured tea. "My full name is Julian Reed Blackwell," he began quietly. "My family owns Blackwell Shipping, the largest maritime company on the eastern seaboard." Olivia stared at him, pieces clicking into place. "But the Thornfields presented you as their groundskeeper's nephew." "Yes." Julian's eyes met hers. "It was my idea. Why would you pretend to be someone of lower station?" Julian's gaze returned to the fire. "I grew tired of people seeing only my name, my fortune. When my uncle mentioned the Thornfields were arranging a marriage for their ward, I saw an opportunity." "An opportunity for what?" Olivia whispered. "To be known for myself, not my inheritance." He looked at her, vulnerability raw in his expression. To find someone who might care for Julian, not for Blackwell. The revelation should have angered her, this deception, this game. Yet looking at him now, Olivia saw not calculation, but a loneliness that mirrored her own. That night, the first time, Julian reached for her hand across the table.
Oh.
His touch was hesitant, a question rather than a demand. Olivia's fingers curled around his in answer. Later, as wind howled outside their cottage, Olivia realized with startling clarity that something had shifted between them. This man who had entered her life as a stranger had somehow become the person she most wanted to understand, and perhaps, despite everything, to trust. The Thornfield Summer Ball was an annual tradition that gathered the region's elite families. This year, Olivia attended not as the Thornfield's ward, but as Julian's wife, wearing a simple blue dress that matched her eyes rather than the elaborate gowns Mrs. Thornfield had once forced upon her. "Are you ready for this?" Julian asked as their carriage approached the manor. The past month since his revelation had brought them closer, yet tonight would make their situation public in ways neither could predict. "I'm nervous," Olivia admitted, "but I'm glad we're facing it together." Julian squeezed her hand. "Remember, regardless of what happens tonight, what's between us is real." The ballroom fell to whispers when they entered. Julian Reed Blackwell, heir to the Blackwell fortune, arriving with his wife, the same orphaned girl. The Thornfields had hastily married off to what they'd presented as their groundskeeper's nephew. Mrs. Thornfield approached immediately, her smile brittle. "Julian, what a surprise to see you in proper attire. And Olivia, dear, you look adequate." "Thank you for including us tonight," Julian replied smoothly. "I've been meaning to discuss business with Mr. Thornfield." Mrs. Thornfield's eyes narrowed. "Business?" "Yes, Blackwell Shipping is considering new partnerships. The Thornfield's coastal properties would be valuable, assuming they're not already committed elsewhere." The implied threat hung in the air. Mrs. Thornfield's gaze darted between them. "Perhaps we should speak privately." In the Thornfield study, with both Mr. and Mrs. Thornfield present, Julian revealed the full truth. "You arranged this marriage, believing you were securing your position with my family's company by placing your ward with someone you thought was my representative?" Mr. Thornfield's face reddened. "We were told you were told what you wanted to hear," Julian interrupted. "Your greed made you easy to deceive. You never cared for Olivia's happiness, only what connections she might bring you." Mrs. Thornfield turned to Olivia, voice honeyed with sudden concern. "My dear, surely you see how he's manipulated you. Used you to infiltrate our family?" Olivia felt a strange calm. "The way you used me my entire life? At least Julian has been honest with me about his deception." "We gave you everything," Mrs. Thornfield hissed. "You gave me scraps from your table and called it charity," Olivia replied, her voice steady. "Julian offered me a choice." Later that night, back in their cottage, the weight of the evening settled between them. Julian paced nervously. "I've cost you your relationship with the only family you've known." "They were never family," Olivia said softly. "Just keepers." Julian knelt before her chair. "I need to know now that everything is revealed. Now that you know who I am and what I've done, do you regret our marriage?" Olivia studied him, this complex man who had entered her life as a lie but had somehow become her truth. "I regret that we began with deception, but I don't regret you." Julian's eyes searched hers. "When I first saw you at Thornfield Manor, reading in the garden, so separate from everything around you, I recognized something in you that matched something in me. Loneliness. Yes, but also strength. Is that why you left me tea every morning? Olivia asked, a smile touching her lips. I wanted to care for you without words until I found the right ones. Julian took her hand. I'm still looking for them. That night, for the first time, Julian didn't sleep in the room across the hall. Autumn painted Whisper Harbor in amber and gold. 6 months had passed since the Thornfield ball, bringing changes neither Olivia nor Julian could have predicted. Blackwell House. The ancestral home Julian had avoided for years now belonged to them, a wedding gift he had only recently claimed. Perched on the cliffs overlooking the harbor, it was grand without being ostentatious. With windows that captured both sunrise and sunset over the water, yet tonight, as they sat in their cottage kitchen, the place where they had first begun to know each other. A letter lay between them on the table, an invitation from the Thornfields to a reconciliation dinner. They're desperate, Julian observed. With Hargrove Maritime failing and Blackwell Shipping expanding, they need our goodwill. Olivia traced the embossed letterhead. What do you think we should do? I think, Julian said carefully, that should be your decision. The Olivia who had first entered this cottage would have deferred, would have sought the answer that would please others. But she was no longer that woman. I spent my life haunted by the Thornfields' approval, she said. I don't want to continue that pattern. Julian nodded. Then we decline. No, Olivia said, surprising herself. I want to accept not for reconciliation, but for closure. I want to walk into that house on my own terms, not theirs. Evening, they stood before the Thornfield Manor, no longer as ward and groundskeeper, but as equals. Mrs. Thornfield greeted them with strained politeness. Mr. Thornfield with transparent ambition. Penelope, newly returned from Europe, watched the proceedings with barely concealed curiosity. Dinner was a masterclass in polite warfare. The Thornfields spoke of the past as though they had been Olivia's loving guardians. Julian parried their business proposals with non-committal courtesy. During dessert, Mrs. Thornfield made her move. We've been thinking, Olivia dear, that perhaps it's time to formalize your position. A proper adoption at last making you legally a Thornfield. The table fell silent. Olivia set down her spoon, the crystal sound ringing in the quiet. 20 years to make me family, she said softly. You chose not to. I was good enough to be your ward, but not your daughter. Now that I'm connected to the Blackwells, suddenly I'm worth claiming. Mrs. Thornfield's smile faltered. You misunderstand? No, Olivia interrupted. I understand perfectly for the first time. You see people as ledger entries, assets, or liabilities. I was a liability until Julian made me valuable to you. That's hardly fair, Mr. Thornfield blustered. Julian covered Olivia's hand with his. I think my wife has been more than fair, considering. They left soon after, walking through the gardens where they had first observed each other from a distance. The night air was cool against Olivia's flushed cheeks.
Are you all right?
Julian asked. Olivia paused beneath an old oak tree. I spent so long trying to earn their love that I never questioned whether it was worth having.
Julian brushed a leaf from her hair, and now
I know what real love looks like, she said. It looks like tea waiting in the morning, like wildflowers in jam jars, like truth, even when it's difficult. Julian drew her close. I never expected to find you when I agreed to this arrangement. I thought at best we might achieve a comfortable partnership. And at worst, you would discover who I was and hate me for the deception. Olivia smiled. I'm still deciding on that part. Julian laughed, the sound genuine and free. Fair enough. They walked hand in hand toward the cliffs where Blackwell House stood illuminated against the night sky. And beyond it, the endless horizon of the sea. I've been thinking, Julian said as they reached the path home. The marriage certificate we signed it was part of an arrangement neither of us fully understood or chose. Olivia looked at him curiously. Julian stopped walking and turned to face her. From his pocket, he withdrew a small wooden box, carved with forget-me-nots, the same flower he had left in her poetry book months ago. Olivia Blackwood, he said, opening the box to reveal a ring of sapphires that matched her eyes. Would you marry me again? Not because anyone arranged it, not because of duty or necessity, but because we choose each other. Tears blurred Olivia's vision as she took in the man before her, no longer the quiet gardener, no longer the secret heir, but simply Julian. The person she had come to love through daily kindnesses and hard-won trust. Yes, she whispered, her voice carrying on the sea breeze. This time, and every time after, I choose you. As autumn leaves danced around them, Olivia realized that the greatest fortune wasn't in ships or properties, or even names. It was in finding someone who saw you clearly and loved you anyway, past the deceptions, beyond the wounds, into the truth of who you were becoming together.